to episode 5 of the Shift PanelCast. If you would like to ask any of our panelists questions, please just go down to chat and put them in the chat. I'll make a note of it, and at the end we'll ask some questions. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Hailey Mason. I'm the founder and MD of an events agency up in Sydney, or in Sydney, Australia. And this idea formed with a chat from my business partner, CT, who's one of the panelists also on tonight. So our purpose behind the PanelCast is to shift mindsets for a positive change, specifically within the sports, marketing, entertainment, and events industries. So we want to bring as many voices as possible from the greater marketing landscape to ignite some ideas in us over the next 6, 12, and 18 months, so that we can try and relaunch events and brand activations. Last week, we discussed technology and content industries in relation to igniting innovation. And this week, we decided to focus on sport, in particular on surfing. Surfing has seen an incredible evolution in its sport, especially in changes in the last few years, in particular with wave pools and then the surfing entering the Olympics for the first time, although that's been delayed for another year. Our guests tonight have been a crucial part of development in Australia and globally by identifying their key assets and building great relationships. So through these 3 very close relationships spanning over years in the industry, they jumped on an opportunity probably around 6 to 8 weeks ago when we went into lockdown, and it's possibly the most innovative pivot that we've seen in the industry. And they've launched a surf competition that's taken over Australia. So we have Phil Macdonald, CEO of Ocean and Earth. He is a pro surfer turned marketer and now CEO of Ocean and Earth, and been with the company for over 20 years. Phil, is that correct?
Yeah, since I was 13, and I'm 41 right now.
My math still isn't very good. And then we also have Luke. Luke is the CEO of Surfing New South Wales, started with Surfing New South Wales as an event coordinator, and is now the CEO, and so been with Surfing New South Wales for 13 years. And we also have Chris Friend, who's the co-founder of Clippero. The Clippero is what I would see as the finest example of how to be agile within the lockdown. Chris was a pro athlete on the WSL tour to then start the development of Live Heats and now Clippero. And we also have CT, who's our regular panelist and my business partner. He's the creative director with 20 years in the industry and worked in sports events globally, with many large global brands. So thank you very much, guys. All right, so I'm going to get on to the questions. We've had quite a lot of questions in, so thank you so much. These guys are very popular. So Phil, first of all, can you just give us a background about Ocean and Earth and about your people and purpose?
Yeah, well, Ocean Earth's been around for 40 years. So it was started by a gentleman by the name of Brian Cregan, and it was started on the south coast of New South Wales in Sussex Inland. I suppose when all the surfing industry was just starting off, the Quicksilvers, Billboard, and Rick Curls. He was a former pro surfer and started using products, and he started using a leash, and he thought he could do a better surfboard leash than other people. So he came up with a new innovation and used some new materials, and got in his car and started going up and down the road selling the products. And back then there was only a couple of surf stores, and surfing started taking off, and obviously as surfing took off, more surf stores kind of opened up and more people started purchasing the products. And yeah, I think last year we celebrated our 40th anniversary, and Brian is still the managing director of the business, and it's gone, from strength to strength. We've had up and downs, obviously, but our business is basically to supply surfing hardware to people who are going to surf and travel and enjoy surfing around the world, and we're here to support that kind of dream.
Awesome. So you said 40 years, which is quite a long time for any brand, right?
a long time.
And so Ocean and Earth have made it through a GFC. They've made it through the recession of the 80s and 90s. What do you think their secret to success has been?
I think the secret to success is understanding the customer and understanding the market and understanding our place in that market. And we've always had a very long-term look on the business model and the business structure rather than a short-term. And our business, our business and our budgets are all based around the core offering that we offer. And they're the products. If you look from 10 or 15 years, they keep growing over a 10 or 15 year period, and that's what we base our model around. We do get trends that come in and out, and we tend to jump on them and get off them, and they're usually around a 3 to 4 year cycle. But I think the main thing is that we've always made sure the budgeting is around the core products, and our core products are people who actually surf, who are going to wear the products, travel with the products, and get in the water and use them. And because we're focused so much on customer service and the relationships we have with our stores and making sure that quality is at the forefront and innovation is at the forefront, and consistently delivering on that year in, year out for 40 years, you build up quite a trusted community around you. And I think today we kind of see that, especially in a crisis like now. We see people probably going to brands that they trust and know what they expect from them. And that's kind of what's happening with us at the moment.
Yeah, and you've identified essentially what your asset is in the business, and through recessions or GFC, people go to what they need, right? And surfers need hardware. They don't necessarily need the clothing that goes with it, but they need the hardware to surf. Is that correct?
So our customer is someone who actually surfs. I think you saw probably in the early 2000s, surfing was exploding. And the Quicksilvers and the Billabongs become billion-dollar businesses, but they weren't necessarily, I suppose, selling their product to a core surfer who someone was going to go surfing. I'd say a high percentage of their customers were just buying into surf fashion. And as we know, fashion kind of comes in and out. So fashion isn't as popular as it was anymore. But there's more people surfing, and we're stuck to our guns, and our aim is always, we're core surfers, we're all surfers, it's owned by surfers, and our passion is surfing, so we want to make the best products to deliver that to our customers who want to surf and want to continue to travel and enjoy their surfing, and hopefully we play a part in their journey.
Yeah, awesome. So I think from that, just so that we can relate it to some of the people who are watching that have brands or have businesses, that sort of identifying the core is probably what can get you through an economic crisis. I'm going to, CT, can you expand on that a bit, maybe for other people that are watching? On
the asset side?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think, and Phil, who's pretty much lined that out there, is, for O&E is all about, superior hardware, and, their ability to innovate, rather than rely on riding trends. I would say for Surfing New South Wales, and Luke can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say for Surfing New South Wales, it's about people. It's about members, and obviously data comes off the back of that in the asset case. And then for Chris, their asset is tech and their ability to innovate tech, and their agility, and we're going to probably talk about that a bit further down the line here, and how quickly they're able to turn something like that around. For us, our asset is creating assets out of events for our clients. And from now, it's going to be extra important for brands and events to identify their true asset, and then build their business around it for the future. And I think if we go back to that, that's something that, as Phil is saying, that's something that O&E has now done, and that they've stood the test of time through some of those hard times, and that's a lesson to learn.
Cool, thank you. Luke, could you tell us? Sorry, hi Luke. How are you today?
Hey, how are you? Good. Thanks for having us.
Can you just tell us a bit more about Surfing New South Wales, about your involvement in events, just a bit more about the organisation?
Yeah, we're the state sporting organisation for surfing. So we run everything to do with surfing, from help the surf schools and the board rider clubs run at a grassroots level all the way through the elite level of surfing. So in our constitution, we're a not-for-profit organisation that progresses stand-up paddleboarding, longboard, shortboard, bodyboard, kneeboard, all the disciplines of surfing through to the world titles. So there's that career pathway of surfing at an amateur level. But then we also, so there's a lot of events that relate to that to make that happen and produce Team New South Wales. And that's where we've obviously worked with partners like Phil and Brian from Ocean Earth on all of that. So events are a big part of that pathway. But then from the participation community side, we're also working across government a lot. So lots of new initiatives that we're working with lots of different ministers on to enable the recreational surfer now to get involved with Surfing New South Wales. So, we want to create a healthy and happy Australia through surfing and be the most loved sport. And I think we're in a really great position because we're a lifestyle as well as a sport. So we can have the structure, but then we can also, tap into the 1.5 million recreational surfers and work with brands and be really innovative in regards to, more tech ideas. So we also look at high performance as well. So obviously with the Olympics, we have a play which I think we'll tap into a bit later with Surfing Australia. And then also, just working with government, making sure that we have a structured sport and working out what other sports are doing and how we can be the best sport we can for Australia.
Cool. Thank you for that. Now, you mentioned that you've had a long-term relationship with Phil and with Ocean and Earth. How long have you guys known each other?
About 10, 15 years or so. Obviously, I used to compete as a grime and look up to Macca, which is awesome. And then
are you showing Macca's age now?
Yeah, he rips. I love his surfing still, and Friendy would be a testament to that as well, I'm sure.
Well, how did Chris come into it? So how long have you all known each other over the years? How did that work?
Well, I guess we've worked with Ocean Earth and Macca and Brian for a long time, from running and owning events together for junior surfing. We created assets together and ran them for 10 years in a row. And then I used to compete in events and also just at an amateur level, and then still in board riders clubs myself. And I think, Chris did the same thing, and we met kind of on the junior series, and then later in life, probably the last 5 years or so since live heats. I'm sure he'll expand on that a bit more for the judging side of things for our events. That's how we've connected. Awesome.
So time to say hi to Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
I believe everyone calls you Friendy.
Yeah, that's right.
So can you tell us a bit more about Clippero and how between the three of you this turned out this whole competition series within 20 days?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Luke mentioned, I come from a company called Live Heats, which we started about 4 years ago. Live Heats is a live scoring event management software platform that was really born out of experience a friend and I had competing in our local board riders club. He was a software programmer and wanted to get access to the scores for a heat he was in, and found out that basically most of the judges had missed his best waves. The data was written on a piece of paper in the back of the truck, in the board riders truck. So he basically asked me if I'd team up with him to build a web solution that they could use to run their events. So we sort of grew that from there, and I've been working now with about 400 different action sports organisations around the world. Work mainly in surfing, but we also do live judging for skateboarding, BMX, snow sports, free ski, snowboarding, all of the X Games style action sports you'd see. And then when the lockdown set in, it was basically a matter of, all of a sudden we were running, 60 to 100 events a week on the platform. And it went to zero overnight. So that's when Luke reached out and wanted to innovate in this period and we had a team of software people here that we could sort of use to build something and, you know, create some value for the action sports community in this hard time. And, you know, Luke had the idea of pivoting the Surfing New South Wales regional series into a virtual contest. And we had the technology from a judging standpoint. So we thought, why don't we just, you know, build a dedicated platform that would allow not only Surfing New South Wales, but also the rest of the action sports community to not have to cancel all of their events, but actually run them as a video contest format, with the, you know, the video experience built into the judging and the leaderboards, etc., to crown champions, all part of one holistic experience.
And how successful has it been? How many sort of competitions do you have running at the moment within the surf?
Yeah, so it's been a very short turnaround. I think Luke's original text, you know, where he wanted to run a virtual comp, came through on about the 30th of March. We decided to start working on this in sort of the first week or two of April. And then we released the beta version on the 20th of April. So as I was saying, luckily we were in the lockdown, so our software team were all, you know, cooped up in their apartments and super keen to work on something exciting. So we were able to spin it around really quickly. And then before we launched it, we already had about 40 different organizations pre-registered, which was really cool. So a big sort of backlog of, you know, different clubs, tours, associations around the world wanting to launch online comps. And then when we released it on the 20th of April, you know, it was like a bit of a floodgate opening. We had events pop up, you know, in a surfing comp in Israel, a skateboarding comp coming out of Singapore. I saw a bikini contest get created on there in the first
Yeah,
week.
right.
I saw a pig show pop
Diverse.
up in Arizona.
A pig show.
A pig show, yeah, from a
Great.
livestock organization in Arizona. And so now we're about 14 days into the journey, and I think we're up to about 130 challenges.
And so with the challenges, though, there's multiple people that are competing within those challenges.
Exactly, that's right.
Yeah.
So each challenge is generally a club or an association, and then, you know, within that you've got, you know, 50 to 150 competitors. And then in addition to competitors, you've got spectators and judges all jumping onto the platform to, you know, consume the content, judge the content, check out, you know, what's going on, and getting engaged.
Cool. I mean, it's incredible that you guys managed to turn that around within 20 days. And I think something from speaking with you all is what I would take out of it is that if it wasn't for your long-standing relationships with each other, you can't turn something around that quickly, right? Without having a trust in each other. So, you know, Luke trusting you with the tech, Phil trusting Luke with his brand. I think that's all, it's an amazing insight into it. Also with that, it does sound as well like this could be a really good potential for sort of an added layer to grassroots. Is that right to say, Luke, that the development of sport, how do you see it impacting the evolution of surfing?
Yeah, obviously it provides scalability. You know, we run a lot of events up and down the coast, and nothing will ever beat that, you know, the experience of being together on the beach. But this provides, you know, a lot of different layers of kids that might not, you know, be able to travel up and down the coast to that event or get there, or might not have the time, but they have the vision of themselves, so they can get judged, and we can get, you know, we don't have to be on the beach and have, you know, more staff on the beach. It's less labor intensive, but once we've got the tech, obviously partnerships. So I think the scalability of it is something we want to keep going on in the future. So we see a hybrid of go back to normal whenever that is, but keep these running, and yeah, I could see a hybrid of that definitely happening.
Yeah, awesome. So it's like, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that kids could have had to go to lessons, or they have to necessarily go into a live comp. They can start off in Clippero and make their way to the live comp.
Yeah, lots of kids, more so the junior surfers, all of them got a lot of footage of themselves, a lot of videos. So, you know, it's a great way to use that in a kind of competitive environment, that shows their skills and gets their profile out there. It's great for athlete development. Good for the coaches as well to compare. There's multiple layers.
Yeah, cool. And we were speaking with Phil yesterday, and he mentioned that he had come up with a similar idea about 10 years ago. Can you talk us through that, Phil, and maybe the timing of it?
Yeah, I suppose when Luke rang me up and actually pitched the idea, one, I thought it was great. The Surfing New South Wales moved so quickly, to innovate. Especially being a surfing body, non-profit, they really got on the front foot and innovated. So I take my hat off to Luke, and I take my hat off to Chris for coming up with an app so quickly. And when you look at it now, it kind of makes sense, right? Yeah, why hasn't someone done that before? But as we talked about yesterday, everything's about timing, I suppose. I suppose the time is right to the law or something like that. But I did say this to Luke and Shamu about 10 or 15 years ago when I just got off the tour, and I just started in O&E, and I had a few extra hours to kill. I came up with a virtual surfing titles. I didn't come up with any software or anything like that. But yeah, it was basically people submit a wave, and then you get through one round, and then next month you submit another wave, and then you get to the semi-finals, and then you go to the state titles, and you go to the Australian titles. So
and look, I think with innovation, you can come up with lots of ideas, right? But sometimes it's just not, the timing just isn't right. And we were speaking about this last week on the PanelCast, that CT had come up with an idea as well. And I think it's just all about timing, isn't that right, CT? We've had lots of discussions about this.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to top you on that one, Phil, because that was 20 years ago that I came up with that one. And it got, it was, I'm not going to go into it because we went to it last week, but around the V8s, and they politely turned it away. But we've put it forward to them again with the E-Series going on, and who knows, these things have a place at some point in time. So I think with that, is something you said to us, Phil, as well, as that everyone's got a drawer full of ideas, a top drawer full of ideas, or a book, or a file on their computer, of ideas that that were good, but they just didn't, for one reason or another, they didn't work at the time. But they were good ideas, and so they were keepers. So they go back in the drawer, or they go back into the book, or file, or whatever you're using. But it's sometimes with it, it's about the stars aligning, and about the right brands or partners. Like you guys have all come together with a great relationship. It's about the sport, or the right circumstance, right technology, and the timing's a huge part of that. And going back to what you were saying, we touched on the V8 thing, but another example for us would be, we had which was, Red Bull Dirt Pipe, which is BMX Dirt Half Pipe event that we made for Red Bull. We tested it as a concept, and then that idea sat for 7 years in the top drawer. And eventually the time was right, and the venue was right, and all of the elements came together, and it took off, and it was a really big success globally. So,
and the skill of the sport was right.
Yeah,
or 100%. As with this app, that the kids can use it now. People can use it. They're into using software now, whereas they might not have been 10 years ago.
Yeah, the technology's right. People are adopting, this format now as well, which maybe they weren't before. And so, it's all about the timing coming right. And when the timing's right, it's about understanding that, pulling it together with the right people, and jumping on it fast and getting it done.
Yeah, totally agree. Anyone have any ideas or things that you've seen in the past that have been a bit of a fail?
Before you move on, I just want to know what else Phil's got in his top drawer. If he's got anything else to dust off.
I'll show you when I'm 80.
Sorry.
To have an innovation. When you come up with a good idea, to write it down. You know, you put it through someone, ask for their feedback, and sometimes you develop these ideas and they get 80% of the way, and you know, there's something that just stops you. But I think having the mindset of always looking to be innovative and you know, being ahead of the time, when these circumstances come like we are in now, that's when you kind of pull on those thought processes. And I think it's important not to ever stop doing that type of innovation and thoughtfulness, I suppose, in work. Because I think, you know, when you look at business, it's not just a period of 1 or 2 years. It's quite a long period. And I think there's different moments that I look back, especially in my career, and while you're successful at the later part in your career or something like that, it's actually the little steps that you take when you start doing business or you start becoming a professional athlete. I think there's some really basic steps there that are nearly more important than the actual end position you end up with. And I think part of that is you know, being innovative and not being bricked in. You have to be very open to everything and acceptable to everything, because one day you might need that little note you scribble down, that innovation, or that customer that you met on a plane, the guy that you met on the plane might be the guy that's going to invest in your business in 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree. There's been a couple of times when I've noted down ideas on the back of a coaster in a pub or something like that, and those ideas have gone on to be, you know, ideas we've pitched into with clients and then gone ahead and produced, you know. And so it's important to note those, and then, you know, you can use your let it sit for a day or so, and if it's still a good idea, or 2 years later, if it's still a good idea, then it's a good idea. And then, you know, it's about how do you make that work.
Yeah, and then you just got to flick the switch when it's right, Luke?
Exactly. Yeah. Obviously, in this situation, we had a range of events planned that kids had already entered. So, you know, we thought, hey, we can either let's ask them. We came up with concepts, so we actually went out to them first, and they said, hey, well, you know, can you keep our entry fees and we enter in this? So the market also, you know, shifted us to what they wanted also.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so when you rang Chris up, Chris, did you feel like there was a bit of pressure on timing to get it out?
Yeah, absolutely. So when the lockdown set in, the Live Heats team, we were all feeling pretty miserable for ourselves. I had a big trip booked to go to the States and Europe for some snow events that we had to cancel, and we sort of were pretty miserable for a few days, and we decided to just, you know, start putting ideas on the table. We had a few meetings where each team member had to bring in a handful of ideas, and, you know, some of the ideas were completely left and center. I think one that came through was a platform that random communities could use to build dating apps for their niche community. Like if you wanted to build a dating app for mountain climbers, you could use this platform.
There's actually one in the UK called Mucky Mudders.
Yeah,
it's just for people that like live in the country.
Yeah, I actually still don't mind the idea. I mean, maybe we'll look at it in the next crisis. But yeah, so we had a few of these ideas, and we were sort of, you know, debating them internally, and then Luke, you know, gave me a call to mention the concept of pivoting their event into a virtual contest. And we thought, well, you know, we could somehow allow them to use our Live Heats live judging platform, but, you know, have the content live on Instagram or YouTube or another platform and run it that way. But then, you know, we thought if you used Instagram, you get likes involved and it can become a bit of a popularity contest. And you don't want the content and the judging and the leaderboard experience to be separated. So we really just thought, let's just knuckle down and build something here. And, you know, we knew that there was a very short window that we had to launch this thing and go to market with it, because it's on everybody's minds now. And in the sport world, you know, people like Luke are having to stare down the barrel of mass event cancellations. And they're out there searching for solutions to stop them having to do that, or at least able to provide their communities with some way to stay engaged. So yeah, we set a pretty ambitious deadline, and I'm surprised that Luke held us to that. He put his trust in our team that we'd deliver on that, and he had 130 kids who'd paid registration to enter this virtual comp, and they had to be able to jump onto the new platform, upload their clips, create their profiles, do a whole bunch of stuff. In a week or two of us actually starting building it. But yeah, we dug deep and we launched the absolute bare essentials that we could get the thing off the ground and get some events running through it, and it worked out well.
Made the deadline.
Yes, just.
So staying on the theme of timing, this was going to be the first year of surfing going into the Olympics. And Luke, you had 3 of 4, is that correct? 3 of 4 athletes that are based out of New South Wales. So
that's what you're claiming. Is that right, Chris?
Yes.
Luke, so.
Yeah, 3 out of 4, and then obviously if you look at Julian, he lives in Newcastle now, so you
just claim 4.
So
it's
it's really cool to see. It's pretty amazing to see that obviously all of those, Sally, Owen and Steph have all come through the same pathway we still run today, and Ocean Earth have been a big part of that. So seeing the regional, state, Australian titles, and then the WSL juniors, the coaching, the board out clubs, that same system is still there, that the Olympians from our state are still in. So it's really amazing to see.
And do you think that the timing has affected those athletes or their training, their mentality? Like how do you think that this has gone for them, but also for you as an organisation?
Yeah, I think obviously everyone was prepared for it, and now they obviously have more preparation time. But surfing's probably a bit different to other sports. It was the first year, so they don't know any different. But the athletes, that they're still in an amazing headspace. Some they're very different athletes. Sally compared to Steph, for example, very, very different training regimes. And, I think that Steph's more a cruisy surfer and a cruisy trainer rather than a Sally. So their mindset would have been, that would have taken them different. But I believe that another year, I think for our marketing of surfing being in the Olympics, it's another whole year of marketing. And grassroots, we can really get stuck into getting into the schools and the community and working with the AOC even closer. So I look at that as an opportunity. So that's the positives out of that anyway.
Yeah, we had Jen on, who's the Associate Director for Marketing for Optus, and they have partnered with the AOC to actually take it into schools. Are you guys going to be part of that development?
Yeah, that's the exact program, Unleashed.
Yes, that was it. Yeah,
Olympics Unleashed. So that's an example where we were scrambling to get involved in that at a New South Wales grassroots level, and we had some projects lined up, and now that's an example of us being able to really lean in really hard on that and plan it out with the athletes to get into schools and then associate other programs like this one, for example, as a digital play on top of that.
Yeah, amazing. And Phil, you sponsor some of these athletes as well. There's probably some people that are tuned in tonight and that will watch it later that might not know about all the sponsorship regulations around brands that have got an existing sponsorship, but their athletes are going into the Olympics. Can you just explain a bit about how your brand is quite unique in that?
Yeah, so we have 2 athletes that are competing in the Tokyo Olympics. We've got Owen Wright, who grew up on the South Coast, and we've got a Japanese competitor, Kanoe Igarashi, who we both look after for their hard goods. So we, all the surfboard covers, the surfboard leashes, the tail pads, those products are the products that we supply to them. They have their major sponsors. Kanoa's got Red Bull and Quicksilver and a lot of Japanese sponsors, and Owen's main sponsors Rip Curl, and he's got Monster Energy, I think Dragon, and a few other sponsors. So with the rules and regulations, because it is amateur and because each country teams are usually sponsored for the uniforms and different products, And then obviously the Olympics have partnerships with different businesses around the world. They're quite limited to actually displaying any of the logos of their major sponsors. Because surfing is a technical product and they need a technical equipment to support them as an athlete, they're able to use products that they would normally use, but they can't have a sticker that's not part of like a technical product. So say a surfboard, for example, they're allowed to use their surfboard and it can still have the surfboard logo can still be on the board. But they can't put another logo on that surfboard, like a Quicksilver or a Rick Cole or anything like that. It's got to be a technical product and it has to be in the marketplace 6 months before the actual event starts. So in our case, we usually have a sticker on the surfboard as well, so we won't be able to have the sticker, but we get our tail pad, which has a logo on it as well, and we have a surfboard leash, which has our logo on it as well. So as far as we're concerned, it's a pretty good win for us. We're not one of the bigger sponsors on their board, but, you know, during the Olympics, we'll still get quite a bit of coverage. So that's how it works out. And, you know, you'll probably see Owen Wright might be in a Speedo board short or something like this, but that's obviously
So sluggos.
Sluggos, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing with the Olympics. It's so incredibly amazing, but they do need to bring in large amounts of sponsorship, and unfortunately, they have to cut out all of the brands that have supported athletes for years when they go there. But being a hard goods company and being a specialist company, at least you get to support your athlete there.
Yeah, I suppose we sneak in the back door a little bit, but yeah, it must be frustrating for the Rick Hill and Quicksilvers and the Red Bulls and these guys who pay quite a lot of money to have their stickers on their boards, and obviously they've been, you know, supporting these guys since they're little kids all the way through. You know, they get to the world stage, obviously the biggest sporting stage in the world, and you know, they're not allowed to have their stickers on their boards or be able to promote them, you know, during those events. So that is frustrating for them. And I suppose we're lucky, and I suppose it's one of those questions that people always ask, you know, do you think the Olympics is going to push surfing through the stratosphere? And some people will probably say yes, some people say no. I suppose the jury's still out there and we'll find out after the Olympics. But, you know, I personally think it's a great thing to see surfing, you know, from when I started to where it is now in the Olympics. You know, it's a good recognition for the sport, and it's, you know, to me, it's the best sport in the world. There's no other sport that you can have you know, compete and also have the lifestyle that matches it. So I'm excited to watch it, even though it's going to be in small ways in Japan. I still think it's a spectacle. And
personally, I'm excited for it to be in the Olympics. Like, I think it's amazing. I was around and snowboarding back in the day when snowboarding went into the Olympics, and there was a lot of the same conversations about, you know, sponsors having supported the athletes all the way through. But actually, it's good for the athletes and it's good for the brands in the end, especially post the Olympics.
yeah, I think it will create some, you know, we need superstars in surfing. We're probably, there's a few out there, but in Australia, it'd be good to, you know, if someone does win gold, obviously that person's going to be a highly celebrated athlete in Australia. And I think that really helps, you know, put surfing at the forefront of people's mind. And I think it helps the surf industry as a whole, and that just trickles down through the whole ecosystem. But yeah, I mean, Australia's in a good position to win gold medals, and hopefully the governments keep supporting.
Yeah. And like it is proven that the Olympics does boost participation in the sport. And I'm sure, Luke, that you've got a lot of ideas around participation and how to sort of encourage that off the back of the Olympics and through the technology that you're using as well.
Yeah, and definitely like the grassroots programs and the AOC wanting to, I think surfing will bring another element to the viewership for the Olympics as well. Like, it's going to bring a great youth audience. So that's a benefit, I think, to the Olympics. Not that any sport is bigger than the Olympics, but you know, like we can tell the story of the lead up and lead out. I think the school market is a huge one. obviously working more with corporates, but the whole story around the Olympics, and then them being part of Team Australia as well with the other athletes, it just puts surfing in that the great media that it needs to be.
Yeah, cool. So Chris, this is a question for you, and it's actually come up quite a lot, that we've been talking about hybrid events and how live events are going to go back, and has the tech events taken over? Have they taken market share? Are they just there to enhance live events when we can finally go back to them? How do you see your technology, or technology in general, fitting in and guiding the direction of competition or sport?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the next 6 to 12 months is going to be a really strange time for sport events. I think we'll see domestically at the grassroots level, when that's all back up and open, it should be business as usual from a local grassroots club and, state and regional level. But then when we get into the international space, I think it's going to remain problematic for a while until, there's a vaccine or there's some solution that allows everybody to open up their borders. So I personally think the content part of events is here to stay. Content has just become so important in sport over the last few years. Whether it's live content, it's athlete generated content. It's so easy to produce such high quality vision of whether you're skateboarding, you're surfing, you're at home doing some sort of challenge. So I really think that for the international bodies, they're going to have to double down on content and bring content into the competitive fold. And then at the state, regional level, I think it will be a hybrid. You'll be able to run local community events, but getting large groups together will still be hard. So we think that, including the digital pathway into qualification is definitely an option. And then, even some of the pathways that the digitals has opened up, like for example, Australian Skateboarding, one of our partners, run grassroots skate comps all over the country at every council with a skate park, and then they culminate to a national final. They've actually been able to reach more councils and more markets than they had in the last few years, just because they didn't have the resources to run physical comps in every local government area. And now they can actually scale out their qualification events around the country, without that extra expense. So they can feed that into their longer term national pathway. And I think that'll remain part of how it'll run for the next few years for sure.
Yeah, and I think just on what you're saying there, and it's something we touched on last week, with Christy and Duncan, about scalability. And, I think the new technology that you guys have created, it not only gives the sports a chance to engage existing and, new participants, but from an event marketing point of view and from an events point of view, it's an opportunity, I think, to be used to create additional event exposure and engagement. It can be used to increase the scalability, the event pre and during and post events, and drive marketing, consumer engagement, and help to really build the communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with the judging interface now being built into the video experience with Clippero, all of a sudden that means that you can have thousands of judges around the world all tuning in, viewing the content.
Oh no!
Punch the scores straight in, and have a combo of fan call as well as a professional judge panel call, and cool. That scalability can work in a range of ways. Fans participating and submitting their at-home clips, judged by pros or by a special panel, or on the inverse, pros submitting their best clips they've captured over the last 3 to 6 months, because we know that all the top surfers and skaters and snowboarders have all still been out there, filming and getting content. Just because they can't compete with a jersey on doesn't mean that there's still a whole bunch of awesome runs, waves, tricks that can be put out into the public domain. And give the fans a way to judge that, get involved, and really be actively involved in that competitive platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much for that, Chris. We had a question from Matt Baker, actually, and sorry that I missed it. And Luke is so efficient. You can come on anytime. He's already answered it. But what I might do is just say, Matt.
Yeah, for anyone else who hasn't realised it, there you can just, if you can type any questions through on the chat section, and we'll pick them up if we're not already talking about them.
So Matt said, have you had many new participants signed to clubs memberships to take part in the web series? Luke, I know you have replied to that, but could you just give us a quick snippet of your reply?
Yeah, obviously, like such a short time frame, we've been concentrating on our current elite surfers. So that has been our marketing efforts with Clippero and Live Heats have been going direct to them. But we, Chris and myself have spoken about the recreational surfer, and I know they've got some ideas with us to push out to the wider community. Like only a certain amount of people want to compete normally. The elite level, then you have, we've got 15,000 at the board rider club level. That would be the next target. And there's a lot of clubs. Chris could talk on the numbers, but there's a lot of clubs now jumping on this platform. And then the layer below that is that 1.5 million recreational surfer. How could they have fun and compete against each other in a fun way?
Yeah, it's an incredible opportunity there, I think. So this is kind of a question for everyone. Someone sent in a question asking, what do you see happening in the evolution of sports or events in general? Phil?
Yeah, it's a pretty tough question actually in these days. I think we've just seen the example of what Chris and Luke have done within 3 weeks. They've pivoted from kids going to a regional event, and I think there was 8 events, wasn't there, Luke, that were scheduled in New South Wales, to within 4 weeks they're competing online for the same prizes that they would have competed against if they had have gone on to the physical event. So I think always in times of crisis, it's new innovations and new opportunities come out of hardship, and I think surfers will always surf. It's if you walk down to the beach, there's a lot of surfers out there at the moment surfing, and I think we're lucky that once you become a surfer, it becomes ingrained in who you are, and I think no matter what, that's always going to carry through. And I think the big question is, for the next 2 years is what happens with the international borders. And I agree with Chris. I think Australia's done quite a good job so far, and maybe there'll be a regional tour or something like this comes up in terms of like the World Surf League. Is how do they go back to competing at a ultimate level in different locations? I think that's a really big question, and even next year's tour I think will be a really tricky one to navigate. But what I
was saying, Phil, they could just hold it all in Australia, mate. It's just different breaks in Australia and just travel around Australia.
Yeah, I suppose.
Stay here.
I suppose another question is, for the top level, they have like 10 or 12 events, and maybe they could come to Australia for 3 months, and then they can go to Europe and do their 4-day hiatus in a motel and do that. And that's probably one thing they probably would be able to look at doing. I think you got to look at the smaller layers and like the pathways, and how do the pathways fit into qualifying for that top path. And there's a lot of small events around the world, and as an athlete starting your career, you kind of got to travel to multiple countries and surf the smaller events to get to those big events. So it's how does that work? And I think in terms of surfing, and I've always I used to be on the board of directors there at the ASP before I became the WSL, and I think you'll probably see a shift to regional areas. So I think there'll be a bit more focus on having stronger tours regionally, and then people would maybe qualify out of those regional tours to possibly go to a world tour. I think that would be a positive for Australia. I think having a good strong domestic circuit where there's a few stars come out of that, I think that would be really positive. I think that would probably happen in America and Europe. They could probably do these things, and then maybe just have
a couple of big events around the world, and then maybe try and scale that out. But it's interesting times, like with the wave pools coming around now. It's
that was my next question. I just want to talk about wave pools.
Yeah, it's changing.
I mean, it's incredible what surfers are so creative and innovative, right? It's such a progressive sport, and you just don't see surfing slowing down.
No, I think, surfers in general are pretty creative people, and all the way back in the heyday, we have an open mind, and I think we're pretty open to trying new things. And I think that's part of, what you've seen in this example the last month is that innovation, that creativity comes out in surfers, and we adapt pretty quickly. And the wave pool, phenomenon coming through, I think that's going to, encourage people to surf. Like out the back of Melbourne, there's probably going to be a lot more people who would never go to the beach who might actually become good surfers, like in Germany.
Yeah.
I know I think they've got in plans for like 10 or 15 wave pools in Germany. I mean, 15 years ago when I was traveling in Europe, you wouldn't even see a German surfer. Now, actually, if you go to France and Spain and Portugal, the amount of German surfers coming out of there's a lot of them. There's actually some really good surfers. So I think you're going to see an explosion of some people that would probably barely go to the beach become extremely good surfers.
Yeah, and Luke, you've been involved in the one in Sydney, haven't you, for a few years, or that's planned for Sydney?
Yeah, obviously the one at the moment is built in Melbourne, but at Sydney Olympic Park there, Urban Surf, they still have the lease for P5 car park, and that was announced many years ago. But obviously, Melbourne popped up first. They built that amazing facility. So for us in New South Wales, I think Olympic Park would be linked with the Olympics. Be a great addition to our state, and huge population base for the learn to surf side of things. Great transport.
And is there plans for competition at wave pools in Australia?
There's different types of wave pools. There's 3 or 4 or 5 different types. Obviously, the WSL have one type, and they're already doing competition in that one. And then Surfing Victoria, our counterpart down there in Melbourne, they've run the first Australian event down there, which went amazing with all of their amateur and professional Victorian surfers. They look great, and so I think there'll be more and more. But bookings have been amazing, so it was really good to see before COVID hit they were doing well, because the more they can do well, the more they'll keep building them, and it's good times.
Chris, have you managed to have a go?
Yeah, I have. I've done 2 trips already to the Melbourne wave pool.
I thought you were about to say the Maldives.
No. The Melbourne surf trip it's the most exciting new surf trip you can do as a surfer living in Australia. It's actually really cool. We live in Sydney, and you pack your boards, you pack your suitcase, you fly to Melbourne, and you stay with your mates in Melbourne. You get to surf, you get to go have a night out in the city, and then you go back and wash your hangover off with another surf before you go jump back on the plane. I'd highly recommend a boys surf trip to the wave pool down there. It's awesome.
Cool. I mean, it's a really good opportunity for this local travel, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it's probably going to see a boom after the back end of this, with the fact that people can't travel overseas. So, I think that's going to be the surf trip to be had, other than road tripping.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many Indonesian surf trips cancelled from the season that's coming up, so I'm sure the blokes around the world are all going to want to go somewhere and try to get barreled.
And the girls.
Better not say that in front of Hailey. It's better than uppercut.
Yeah.
Well, that actually brings us up to the hour. It's been a really good, fun chat, and it's gone really, really quickly. Thank you so much all for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. So this is a recorded panelcast, so we will be posting it tomorrow. We're actually also launching a podcast, which we'll send a link to. So basically, it'll just be the audio for this every week. So we're noticing more people going back to work and might want something to listen to on their way. So we'll let you all know. Please join our Facebook group, which is the Shift Panelcast. And thank you very much, gents. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Hailey.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.